She knew Howard Hughes before the crash helmet, had a front-row seat to Jeff Chandler's secrets, and Rock Hudson, Mamie Van Doren says she saw the truth behind the tux. Now, she's naming names and she's not sugarcoating a thing. Early Hollywood ambitions. Joan Lucille Olander was just 9 when her family moved from South Dakota to Los Angeles in 1942. It didn't take long for her to dream bigger than school plays. She watched Jean Harlow movies, saw the buzz around Lana Turner's soda fountain discovery, and decided she wanted that life too. By her teens, Joan had bleached her hair platinum and practiced her walk in front of the mirror. She wasn't waiting around to be discovered. She entered beauty contests instead. In 1949, at just 16, she won Miss 8-Ball and Miss Palm Springs. The titles weren't huge, but the exposure was. One of her prizes, a screen test at RKO Studios. That's where Howard Hughes took notice. Hughes, already deep in the Hollywood scene, invited her for a meeting. She showed up, confident and blunt. At one point, he asked if she was a virgin. She fired back, "You'll never know, Mr. Hughes." That line stuck. Hughes reportedly laughed, impressed. That single comeback, part sass, part self-defense, landed her a contract at RKO. Joan was underage, untrained, and mostly uncredited at first, but she had presence. She appeared in background roles in films like His Kind of Woman and 2 Tickets to Broadway. She studied actresses like Harlow and Monroe, but she wasn't trying to be either. She wanted to be sharper, bolder, less sweet. By the end of the decade, Joan had more on her resume than most girls her age. She also had industry attention and a reputation for speaking her mind. In a town that liked quiet girls who smiled on cue, she made it clear she had her own plans. That attitude would take her far, but it also set her apart from the other starlets Universal was grooming. She wasn't just pretty, she was sharp. And in the next chapter, she'd get a new name, a new studio, and a very specific mission: become Universal's answer to Marilyn Monroe. Universal signs Mamie. On the 20th of January, 1953, the same day Dwight D. Eisenhower was sworn in as president, Universal Studios gave Joan Lucille Olander a new identity. They signed her to a contract and gave her a name that sounded like a headline: Mamie Van Doren. Mamie came from the First Lady, Mamie Eisenhower. Van Doren was borrowed from the intellectual Van Doren family to make her sound classy. Universal didn't want a fresh face. They wanted a weapon. Marilyn Monroe had just exploded at Fox. Columbia had Kim Novak. Mamie was their counterpunch. The studio bleached her hair again, upped her makeup, and told her to be sexier, funnier, and louder. Mamie didn't object. She wanted to work, and she wasn't interested in being subtle. She started with small roles. In Forbidden, 1953, she had a bit part. In The All-American, 1953, she got more attention. She played the seductive Code next to Tony Curtis, showing she could do more than just stand around looking pretty. Mamie took acting classes between shoots and trained with coaches, trying to prove she had more going on than just her looks. Behind the scenes, Universal pushed her into the spotlight. They staged publicity photos, lined up press interviews, and crafted stories to make her sound like a playful blonde bombshell with brains. Mamie played along but added her own twist. She didn't flirt softly or play dumb. She made bold jokes, called out bad behavior, and didn't wait to be asked for her opinion. She knew the Monroe comparison would follow her everywhere, but she wasn't trying to be a clone. Monroe was soft. Mamie was sharper. She called herself a female James Dean. That kind of line didn't sit well with some in the studio, but it stuck. By the end of 1953, Mamie Van Doren wasn't just a name on a contract. She was a rising brand. And Universal had big plans. They wanted her at premieres and gossip columns, and most importantly, in front of the camera. She was about to get her first big red carpet test. Universal set her up on a public date with one of their biggest stars, someone with secrets the studio didn't want out. Rock Hudson date. In February 1953, Mamie Van Doren got her first real taste of Hollywood spin. Universal paired her with Rock Hudson for the 10th Golden Globe Awards on the 26th of February. It wasn't about romance, but a photo op. The studio wanted buzz, and Rock was one of their most bankable stars. Mamie was excited. She knew who he was: tall, handsome, rising fast. What she didn't know, at least not officially, was the gossip swirling behind the scenes. In the 1950s, being openly gay in Hollywood could destroy a career, so Rock played the game. He went on arranged dates, he smiled for the cameras, and Mamie was the perfect blonde to match him. The night went smoothly. They posed together, waved to fans, and did everything the studio expected. But Mamie says that when he dropped her off, he tried to push the script further. He asked to come in for coffee. She agreed. He made a move, started fumbling with her crinoline dress. She says it was awkward, even a little funny. Nothing happened. Years later, Mamie didn't hold back when she retold the story. She insisted Rock wasn't bisexual. He tried, she said, but it wasn't there. Not even close. In her eyes, the whole date was for show. She didn't mind. She'd played along, gotten the exposure, and kept her boundaries. To be clear, Rock Hudson never publicly confirmed his sexuality during his lifetime. He maintained the studio-manufactured image for decades. But Mamie wasn't the only one who saw through it early on. Industry insiders whispered, reporters speculated, but no one dared print it. That night didn't hurt her career. If anything, it made her seem more in demand. She looked like the kind of girl who dated big stars, and she played the part well. But off-camera, Mamie was already breaking rules, speaking freely, keeping her own pace, and refusing to pretend something happened when it didn't. Pattern would define her entire career. Howard Hughes affair. Mamie's first real brush with Hollywood power wasn't a studio head or a famous actor. It was Howard Hughes. She met him in 1949 during her early RKO days, right after winning Miss Palm Springs. He was older, rich, and deeply connected in the film world. She was 16 and ambitious. They started an on-and-off affair that lasted several years. Hughes was known for chasing young actresses, and Mamie fit the type, but she wasn't naive. She said he never made her feel forced. In fact, she set rules from the start. One night, before things got physical, she told him they'd have to use protection. Hughes didn't flinch. He already had a supply waiting. He came prepared, she later joked. Mamie admitted she made the decision consciously. Her idol, Jean Harlow, had also been linked to Hughes. Following in Harlow's footsteps felt like stepping into Hollywood history. She didn't see it as giving in. She saw it as a power move. Even after she married her first husband, Jack Newman, in 1950, she kept seeing Hughes. She said the marriage was short and mostly a mistake. Newman was a band leader, but their relationship didn't last the year. Hughes, however, kept reappearing. He didn't offer roles or deals, just dinners, conversation, and the occasional getaway. Mamie never painted him as a monster. She called him complicated, smart, and sometimes strange. He'd fly her places without warning or show up late at night with a car. He liked control, but he also respected her edge. She pushed back when others didn't, and Hughes liked the challenge. Their affair fizzled out quietly. There was no big fight, no scandal in the press. It was just another chapter in both their lives, one that Mamie looked back on with curiosity more than regret. In a town filled with whispered affairs and hidden truths, hers stood out because she never tried to hide it. She told the story herself, direct, witty, no shame. It wasn't love, she said, it was Hollywood, and she knew exactly what she was doing. Yankee Pasha romances. By 1954, Mamie Van Doren had her first major studio role in Yankee Pasha, a Technicolor adventure film shot on Universal's lot. The movie itself was forgettable. The behind-the-scenes action? Not so much. Mamie had just come off her stint with Howard Hughes and was single again. During Yankee Pasha, she jumped into two separate flings. One with the film's director, Joe Pevney, and another with her co-star, Jeff Chandler. Both men were older, established, and clearly interested. Mamie wasn't coy. She went for what she wanted. She later wrote in her autobiography, Playing the Field, that Chandler was sweet but distant. Their time together didn't last long, but he left an impression. She had more to say about Pevney, who directed several big-name films and had a habit of mixing business with pleasure. Mamie didn't mind. She was learning how to work the system while staying in control of it. Jack Palance also made a brief appearance in her life around this time. She described their encounter as fast and fiery. It didn't turn into anything serious, but it added to her growing reputation. People started whispering. Mamie didn't care. If the studios wanted to label her a seductress, she wasn't going to argue. She leaned into it. Unlike the other blondes of the era who tried to play innocent, Mamie refused to fake it. She flirted on her own terms. She picked her partners. She made no apologies. Her relationships weren't about climbing ladders. They were about curiosity, confidence, and chemistry. While Yankee Pasha pushed her further into the spotlight, it was her off-screen reputation that made her famous. She wasn't a studio puppet. She was wild, outspoken, and impossible to control. That scared some people, but it thrilled the press. Tabloids started printing stories about her love life, and Mamie didn't deny a thing. She figured honesty was more powerful than scandal. By the end of 1954, she had wrapped one movie, juggled 3 lovers, and kept full control of her public image. No handlers, no fake engagement rings. Just Mamie, calling her own shots and preparing for a whirlwind marriage that would shake things up even more. Bandleader Ray Anthony. In 1955, Mamie Van Doren did something even her fans didn't expect. She got married again, this time to Ray Anthony, a big band leader and close friend of Frank Sinatra. He was older, successful, and had the kind of Hollywood connections most actresses would kill for. Their wedding made headlines. It looked like a real fairy tale. For a while, it felt like one. They lived in a stylish home in Beverly Hills, threw dinner parties, and showed up arm in arm at clubs. Paparazzi followed them constantly. Mamie called it heaven on earth, and for a moment, she meant it. In 1956, they had a son, her only child. She said motherhood changed her, but not in the way the studio hoped. She didn't suddenly want to retire or stay home. She still loved the spotlight, and she wasn't about to give it up just because she had a baby. Ray Anthony didn't love that. Neither did the people around him. Friends warned him about marrying a sex symbol. The press labeled her wild. But Mamie didn't pretend to be something she wasn't. She still went to auditions, did photo shoots, and made appearances that raised eyebrows. Despite the glitz, the marriage started to crack early. Mamie said they were too different. Ray wanted a wife who stayed quiet and looked perfect. Mamie wanted a partner who respected her fire. She claimed she never cheated on him or on any of her husbands, but the gossip columns said otherwise. She ignored them. By 1961, the marriage was over. Their divorce wasn't messy in public, but Mamie was done playing the traditional wife. She kept custody of her son and kept working. Ray moved on. So did she. What stuck was the way she handled it. No dramatic interviews and sob stories. Only a few sharp lines in later interviews. It stopped working, so I stopped pretending. Rock and roll films. She wasn't waiting around for dramatic roles or serious scripts. She leaned straight into the era's wildest trend, rock and roll. Studios didn't quite know how to handle the music craze, but they knew Mamie fit the vibe. Rebellious, sexy, loud, and fearless. Untamed Youth came first. She starred opposite rockabilly icon Eddie Cochran, playing a jailed farm worker who sings her way through teenage rebellion. The movie was low budget and barely reviewed by critics, but it became a cult hit. Cochran's on-screen charm and Mamie's bold attitude created something new, a crossover between music and movie stardom that hadn't really existed yet. Next came High School Confidential. In 1958, Mamie played a sultry teacher in a high school crawling with undercover agents and teen drug dealers. Jerry Lee Lewis performed the opening number on the back of a flatbed truck. The plot was nonsense, but the energy was off the charts. Kids packed the theaters. Adults were horrified. Mamie knew exactly what she was doing. She played it up, camp and all. By 1960, she starred in Sex Kittens Go to College with singer Conway Twitty. The title alone made headlines. The movie was pure fluff, but it kept her in the spotlight. Mamie had carved out a new niche. She wasn't Monroe's fragile dream girl or Novak's cool mystery. She was the brassy blonde who embraced the chaos, strutted through B-movies, and brought rock and roll to the big screen. Off-camera, Mamie kept her image loud and wild. She wore tight dresses, said whatever she wanted in interviews, and ignored studio warnings to tone it down. She wasn't trying to impress critics. She wanted fans. And she got them. Teenagers saw her as fun and fearless. Parents saw her as trouble. Studios didn't know what to do with her long-term, but they kept casting her in roles that matched the times. Rebellious, sexy, and just a little dangerous. Mamie wasn't trying to win Oscars. She was building a legend on her terms. No scripts softened her, no directors tamed her, and no era suited her better than rock and roll. Vietnam War tours. The war was raging, but Mamie Van Doren didn't stay home. When the opportunity came to perform for U.S. troops in Vietnam, she didn't hesitate. She joined the USO tour circuit, flying straight into danger zones to entertain soldiers who were exhausted, wounded, or just trying to survive the week. Conditions were rough. She flew in a helicopter that got shelled midair. She wore a helmet on stage more than once, but she kept going. While most celebrity performers stuck to base shows and retreated fast, Mamie went further. She visited hospitals. She held hands. She posed for photos with soldiers who could barely sit up. She also noticed who wasn't doing the same. Bob Hope was famous for his USO tours, but Mamie later said he performed safely during the day, then flew out to Thailand by night. She didn't name names to start a feud, but she made it clear she stayed longer, went deeper, and took real risks. "I didn't do it for press," she said later. "I did it because they needed it." The experience changed her. Mamie had always been politically neutral in public, but seeing the war up close broke that. She started questioning why they were there, how POWs were being treated, and what the government wasn't saying. After visiting soldiers who had barely survived capture, her view shifted. The Eisenhower-era conservative was gone. Mamie became a vocal critic of the war, especially after seeing the aftermath in Hanoi. She didn't spin it into a career move. There were no photo spreads, no new records, no television specials to cash in. What stayed with her was the look in those soldiers' eyes and the sound of gunfire during a show. She'd spent years playing sexy and funny in front of cameras. Vietnam was different. It was real. That version of Mamie, tough, grounded, still glamorous, but visibly shaken, didn't fit Hollywood's image machine. But she didn't care. She'd done the thing no one expected. She stepped off the soundstage and into a war zone, and came back with stories no press agent could have written. Burt Reynolds' affair. Hollywood kept changing, but Mamie Van Doren wasn't going anywhere. By 1972, she was in her 40s and still turning heads. That's when Burt Reynolds walked into the picture. He was just starting to break into stardom, charming, cocky, and known for his shirtless magazine spreads. Mamie liked confidence. They hit it off fast. Their affair didn't last long, but it left a mark. Mamie later said Burt was funny and smooth, but not built for anything serious. She wasn't looking for a deep connection either. It was brief, playful, and exactly what it looked like. Two good-looking stars, both on their own paths, meeting in the middle for a few weeks of fun. That same year, Mamie married again, this time to Ross McClintock, a businessman from the Fluor Corporation. He wasn't famous, and their relationship moved fast. Too fast. She admitted later she never actually loved him. The marriage was annulled in 1973. It was clear she was trying something different. After a career built on image and chaos, maybe she thought a quiet marriage with a regular guy would work. It didn't. She said McClintock was a good man, but not her match. She needed energy, curiosity, something sharp. And he wasn't it. Throughout all of this, Mamie kept working. She appeared in B-movies, did stage shows, and maintained her public presence. But she wasn't chasing fame the same way. She seemed more selective, more amused by the machine she'd once fought so hard to be part of. What made this era different was how open she became. She started giving interviews with more bite, telling stories that publicists would have once buried. The Reynolds fling? She owned it. The short marriage? She laughed about it. She wasn't trying to spin anything. By the time the McClintock chapter closed, Mamie had 5 marriages behind her and a reputation for telling the truth, whether people liked it or not. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't desperate to settle down. She just kept moving, always in control of her own story. Lasting marriage revelations. Mamie Van Doren finally slowed down, for real this time, in 1979. That's when she married Thomas Dixon, a businessman far removed from the Hollywood chaos. He wasn't rich, famous, or chasing headlines, but he stuck around. The marriage lasted decades through the fading of the studio system, the rise of reality television, and Mamie outliving nearly every peer from her era. She stayed out of scandals, but she didn't disappear. In interviews, she kept speaking her mind. Her autobiography, Playing the Field, gave blunt details about everyone from Rock Hudson to Howard Hughes. And in her 90s, she wasn't done. In a 2025 IndieWire interview, Mamie revisited the Rock Hudson story, the one that started back in 1953. She stuck to it. He tried, she said again, but it just wasn't there. She still believed Hudson was gay, not bisexual, and that their awkward post-Golden Globes encounter proved it. Not everyone agreed, but Mamie didn't care. She wasn't trying to rewrite history. She was determined to tell it her way. In 2025, at 94, she executive produced a documentary, Mamie Exposed, The Life and Loves of the Last Blonde Bombshell. It won't be a comeback, it will be a revelation. The documentary won't just rehash her film career, it will dig into her essence, why she always speaks her mind, why she turned her back on major studios, why she embraces a life less ordinary. Mamie seeks neither pity nor nostalgia. She will demand truth. By 93, Mamie Van Doren wasn't a forgotten bombshell. She was a living archive of glam, gossip, war zones, bad marriages, and Hollywood fakery. And she told it all with a wink.
Most people believe that being a part of Hollywood is a dream come true. From the flamboyant lives of celebrities to the glitz and glam that is often displayed during red carpet events, people are willing to do anything to experience this kind of life. However, not many people know that Hollywood is not what it appears to be. In fact, beyond the illusion of perfection are dark secrets that have been buried and swept under the rug for decades. Over the years, several rumors have been circulated about the dark side of Hollywood. If you ever wondered if the rumors are true, you're about to find out, because this video will uncover the dark and ugly side of Hollywood. Brace yourself. They make things disappear. Have you come across those twisted and ruthless individuals that work with criminal bodies in action movies? You know, the ones they call to make things disappear. Well, what if I told you that these people are not just fictional characters? What if I told you that Hollywood has real-life fixers and they will stop at nothing to make scandals disappear? In November 2002, certain information came to light as it was revealed that an alleged Hollywood fixer, Anthony Pellicano, was caught and brought to justice. He was said to have been involved in the intimidation and threats that a certain journalist, Anita M. Bush, was facing. Apparently, she was one of the journalists who was bold enough to write investigative stories about the film industry and Hollywood super agent Michael Ovitz. At the time, she was also working on an alleged story about mob money being used to finance a film that Steven Seagal starred in. She must have been on the verge of uncovering a dark secret because when she began to dig up information, she started receiving life threats. She was warned to stop digging for information, and it was clear that whoever was sending these threats was trying to protect a powerful person or powerful people in the industry. After a series of investigations were carried out, it was revealed that Anthony Pellicino was allegedly behind the threats she was receiving. Now, as shocking as this news was, this wasn't the first time that Hollywood was rumored to be operating with a set of individuals called fixers. During the silent era and golden age, it was rumored that the likes of Eddie Mannix and Howard Strickling were the fixers that were called whenever a star had a problem that needed to be fixed. When female stars like Lana Turner, Garland, and other MGM stars got pregnant out of wedlock, a fixer was assigned to make the pregnancy go away in order to protect the image of the star. Some male stars who were attracted to men were forced by the fixers to marry women so that the public would be deceived. Any star who refused to comply with a fixer's methods faced consequences that they couldn't recover from. It's been decades since the likes of Strickling rendered their services in Hollywood, and one would think that fixers no longer exist. Well, let's just say they are more secretive. Pellicino, who landed behind bars for his work as a fixer, is said to have helped the likes John McTiernan, Chris Rock, and Courtney Love. A documentary titled Sin Eater: The Crimes of Anthony Pellicino has been released, and it's a complete expose about this fixer's clandestine activities, the dark underbelly of Hollywood, and the lengths powerful people go to protect their image. The curse of a child star. Over the years, Hollywood has managed to discover and groom some of the most talented child stars on the surface of the earth. Many of these child stars have graced screens over the years and proven to viewers that children are also capable of portraying characters excellently, but behind the smiles and starry eyes that these young stars bring to screens is a dark secret that has been kept buried for decades. From the days of Shirley Temple, there have been rumors about the dark things that child stars face behind the scenes. Although most of these allegations have swept under the rug, Shirley Temple's autobiography brought a lot of secrets out and confirmed what viewers were suspecting all along. Anyone who was a fan of Shirley Temple when she was a film star must have felt a strange feeling while watching her on screens. Although she was of preschool age, she was made to act weird roles with grown men, and some of the roles clearly sexualized her. However, the world was stuck with mere suspicions until she decided to unveil what happened in her autobiography. She didn't mince words, as she made it clear that she and her fellow child stars were being treated badly. In her words, if any of the preschool-age children misbehaved on set, they were locked in a windowless booth called the punishment box and be forced to sit on a solid block of ice for extended periods of time. She went on to reveal that she was often touched inappropriately and was terrorized by men behind the scenes. One can only imagine how terrified she must have been felt as she was going through all these at such a young age. But through it all, she had to still show up on screens, sing, dance, and be the bright-eyed actress that everyone loved and adored. In more recent years, several celebrities have found the courage to expose this dark side of the industry, revealing that they too went through a similar experience. It will surprise you to know that the beloved Macaulay Culkin, who made us laugh, cry, and scream through his role in Home Alone, was also abused. He revealed that when he was younger and still finding his footing in Hollywood, he was touched inappropriately by several celebrities. Sadly, just like every young actor who has gone through a similar experience, he didn't know how to get out of the situation, and what made it even worse was the fact that his own father treated him badly all through his career. But Culkin's and Temple's stories are just a few out of the many stories that show this dark side of the industry. In 2014, a Nickelodeon production assistant, Jason Michael Handy, was arrested for child abuse. This is proof that this is yet another dark truth that Hollywood has decided to keep hidden. Strategic collaborations with the paparazzi. Have you ever come across a video of a popular celebrity yelling at the paparazzi and warning them not to take pictures of them? Well, that's just one side of the coin. It is true that the paparazzi can be a relentless bunch of photographers who fight to get pictures of celebrities in different phases of their lives. However, these days, the paparazzi often work hand in hand with celebrities to showcase a certain reality to the media. In the words of a famous Manchester-based paparazzo, Aaron Parfit, "I think a lot of people are quite dumb about how it works. People think we are scumbags hanging out of trees, but these celebrities are ringing us. I've been on holiday with celebrities. Most of them are reality stars. We go to Spain, shoot 6 bikini sets, and stick them out throughout the month. Interestingly, this has remained a secret between celebrities. Interestingly, this practice didn't start recently. Old Hollywood stars were said to have posed for romantic pictures with co-stars, especially for upcoming romance movies. When these pictures were released, fans would get excited about their favorite stars being in a relationship, not knowing that these stars were faking it in order to get views for their upcoming movies. The price of perfection. In an industry where a person's perceived image is the bedrock of their fame, it is no surprise that celebrities go above and beyond to look perfect. But no one knows the lengths that they go in order to lose weight and look perfect for interviews and red carpet events, and the illness that follows this desperation for perfection. Over the years, female celebrities have done it all, from getting plastic surgeries done to subjecting themselves to strict diets, all in a bid to have the perfect figure. While the likes of Marilyn Monroe may have seemed perfect on the outside, not many people know that she struggled with an eating disorder for the most part of her life. One can only imagine the pressure she was under to maintain that slim waist and to remain a beauty standard for women all over the world. In more recent years, it has been revealed that eating disorders are becoming even more rampant in the industry. The actress Naomi Watts once revealed that she starved herself for days so that her outfit would look perfect for a red carpet event. Some celebrities have gone into depression as a result of one eating disorder or the other, and it is clear that this is yet another dark truth that is hidden behind the curtains of perfection in Hollywood. So when you see your favorite actresses smiling and posing for pictures at red carpet events, remember that some of them are struggling internally. Age is not just a number. Ageism is alive and well. These words spoken by Jane Fonda have raised concerns about a practice that the industry is guilty of. It appears that in the entertainment industry, particularly in Hollywood, remains a pervasive issue that affects both male and female actors, albeit in slightly different ways. However, the impact of ageism tends to be more pronounced for women, considering the fact that many female actresses start worrying as they approach 40 due to fears of dwindling opportunities for roles. This fear stems from the industry's obsession with youth and the notion that younger actors are more marketable and attractive to audiences. One significant aspect contributing to ageism in Hollywood is the industry's emphasis on physical appearance. Hollywood has long been criticized for its unrealistic beauty standards and its perpetuation of youth as the pinnacle of attractiveness. As a result, actresses, in particular, face immense pressure to maintain a youthful appearance as they age. This pressure often leads to actresses resorting to extreme measures, such as cosmetic surgery or rigorous diet and exercise regimens, to preserve their looks and remain competitive in the industry. But even with all these measures, age still creeps in. Jane Fonda, a veteran actress with decades of experience in Hollywood, has been outspoken about the prevalence of ageism in the industry. She has highlighted how actresses, even those with illustrious careers like herself, face discrimination and limited opportunities as they grow older. Fonda's own experiences are proof of the challenges older actresses encounter in Hollywood, despite their talent and accomplishments. The issue of ageism is further compounded by instances where actresses feel compelled to conceal their true age to avoid being overlooked for roles. Margot Robbie's experience, where rumors about her age prompted backlash, underscores the pressures actresses face to adhere to Hollywood's youth-centric standards. Robbie's decision to potentially misrepresent her age reflects the harsh reality that ageism can detrimentally impact an actress's career prospects. While there are exceptions like Meryl Streep who continue to thrive in Hollywood despite aging, their success does not negate the systemic issue of ageism in the industry. Streep's is because of her exceptional talent and versatility as an actress, rather than evidence that ageism is no longer prevalent. It's safe to say that the industry's fixation on youth and perfection perpetuates unrealistic standards and contributes to the marginalization of older actors. Is organized crime real? Back in the old days of Hollywood, there was a chilling incident that shook the town. A group of people barged into the house of an old Hollywood actor, Roman Polanski, and sadly, lives were lost that day. This was one of the tragic events that made people believe that organized crime was prevalent in the industry. More shocking discoveries have been made over the years, and it's clear that there is a high possibility that organized crime still has a grip on the industry. During the Golden Age, Frank Sinatra was said to be part of a shady group called the Rat Pack. The Rat Pack, led by Frank Sinatra, was the epitome of cool in Hollywood during the 1950s and 1960s. Sinatra himself was rumored to have had ties to the mafia, particularly through his friendship with figures like Sam Giancana. The Rat Pack's performances in Las Vegas were often attended by mobsters, adding fuel to the rumors. This made people believe that Hollywood was somehow intertwined with criminals. Some mysterious deaths have also led people to believe that there are indeed dark things happening in the industry. Throughout Hollywood's history, there have been mysterious deaths that some speculate could be linked to organized crime. Whether it's the unsolved murder of famous director William Desmond Taylor in 1922, or the suspicious circumstances surrounding the deaths of various actors and producers over the years, whispers of foul play have often circulated. You see, Hollywood has always had its share of rumors about connections between big stars and organized crime. There was this famous joint called the Trocadero, where celebs and big shots from movie studios would hang out, mingling with notorious gangsters like Mickey Cohen. Even after the golden age of Hollywood, whispers persisted about shady dealings with mobsters, extending into the 1970s. For instance, there was this movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was distributed by a company called Bryanston Pictures. Turns out this company had some connections to a mafia crime family. These stories might sound like something out of a movie themselves, but they were very real. As for whether any celebrities have spoken out about this, well, it's a bit hush-hush. Some might have hinted at it or mentioned it indirectly, but outright confirmation, that's hard to come by. Hollywood's history is full of strange and wild tales, and the ties between celebrities and organized crime are just one part of it. Animals are treated badly. In Hollywood, while many celebrities have championed animal rights causes, there have been disturbing reports suggesting that not everyone in the industry holds the same regard for animals' welfare. Unfortunately, there have been instances of animals being mistreated on the sets of movies, raising serious concerns about animal welfare in the entertainment industry. One notable animal abuse controversy occurred in 2017 during the production of A Dog's Purpose. A video surfaced showing a dog appearing to be forced into turbulent water during filming, sparking widespread outrage. However, it was later reported that the video had been edited to misrepresent the situation. Despite this clarification, the incident raised questions about the treatment of animals on film sets. The mistreatment of animals in Hollywood is not a recent phenomenon. Throughout the history of cinema, there have been instances of animal abuse, sometimes in the pursuit of realistic effects. For example, in the 1925 film Ben-Hur and many old-school westerns, horrifying horse falls were staged, endangering the animals involved. These controversies shed light on a dark aspect of the entertainment industry, where animals have sometimes been subjected to mistreatment for the sake of cinematic effects. While efforts have been made to improve animal welfare standards on film sets, these incidents prove that there is still work to be done when it comes to ensuring the safety and well-being of all animals involved in movie productions. Is lack of diversity still prevalent? Recently, a video of the African-American actress Taraji Henson surfaced the internet. In the video, she was crying profusely and talking about the fact that people of color are treated unfairly in the industry. There is no denying that lack of diversity is still a major issue in Hollywood. People of color are usually stereotyped as gangsters, drivers, while other minority groups are chosen to portray maids. It is clear that there is still a lack of diversity in Hollywood. One prominent actor who has spoken out about the lack of diversity in Hollywood is Viola Davis. Davis, who is African American, has been vocal about the limited opportunities for people of color in the industry. In her 2015 Emmy acceptance speech, she famously stated, "The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there." Davis has highlighted the fact that roles for minorities often fall into stereotypical categories, limiting the range of characters they can portray and perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The lack of diversity in Hollywood not only limits the opportunities available to minority actors, but also perpetuates harmful stereotypes and reinforces systemic inequalities. When minority groups are only offered roles that fit narrow stereotypes, it reinforces the idea that they are only capable of portraying certain types of characters. This not only limits their career prospects, but also perpetuates harmful stereotypes that can contribute to discrimination and prejudice in society. Furthermore, when white actors are cast in roles that should be played by people of color, it further marginalizes minority groups and denies them opportunities to tell their own stories. This practice, known as whitewashing, erases the experiences and perspectives of people of color and perpetuates a narrative in which white voices are prioritized over others. It is essential for the industry to continue making efforts to be more inclusive and to provide opportunities for actors from all backgrounds to tell their own stories and represent the diverse world in which we live. The wild and dark parties are real. The notion of dark or notorious parties within Hollywood has indeed been a subject of speculation and controversy for decades. While it's common for celebrities to come together for social events and blow off steam, there have been persistent rumors and occasional revelations about the darker aspects of some of these gatherings. Heidi Fleiss, known as the Hollywood Madam, became infamous in the 1990s for her involvement in running a high-end prostitution ring catering to wealthy and influential clients, including many from the entertainment industry. Her arrest and subsequent revelations shed light on the underbelly of Hollywood's elite social scene, where substance abuse and exploitation were alleged to be prevalent. The notion of powerful figures exploiting their status and indulging in illicit activities is not confined to recent times. Throughout the history of Hollywood, there have been stories and scandals involving sex, drugs, and other forms of misconduct at parties attended by the rich and famous. From the golden age of Hollywood to the present day, tales of debauchery and excess have circulated, sometimes whispered and sometimes exposed in the media. Recent allegations surrounding figures like P. Diddy only add fuel to these long-standing rumors. While it's important to approach such allegations with a critical eye and recognize that not all social gatherings in Hollywood are characterized by misconduct, the persistence of these stories proves that there may indeed be a darker side to the glitz and glamour of Tinseltown. Pep pills and substances on set. To the rest of the world, famous actors and actresses are a set of people who have proven to be talented and brought some of the best Hollywood movies to life. While this narrative is true, some of them have done shocking things on set in order to be able to create mind-blowing movies. It will amaze you to know that some of your favorite actors have been dependent on substances to be able to bring their roles to life. And what is even more shocking about this is the fact that these substances are made available on some movie sets. It has been rumored that some stars have been coerced to take these substances against their will. One of the dark truths that has remained hidden in Hollywood for a while is the illegal substances that are given to actors and actresses to enhance their performance. Some of the movies that became a huge success were created by actors who had to take certain substances before acting. Perhaps this is why a lot of movie stars are addicted to these substances. Back in the day, Judy Garland was said to be one of the many stars who was constantly pumped with all kinds of drugs before her performances and even interviews. Sure, she was able to entertain her fans and make her studio a lot of money, but it came at a price, a lifelong addiction. The talented actor Dennis Quaid is one of the few actors who has opened up about this secret in Hollywood. According to him, cocaine was allegedly listed in the budget of some of the movies he appeared in. However, this purchase was disguised as petty cash so that no one would find out that actors were taking these substances on set.
You know Gene Tierney from Laura and Heaven Can Wait, but you don't know the woman the studios tried to hide. This is the real story, stripped bare. Beauty breaks onto Broadway. Before Hollywood ever lit up her name, Jean Tierney was already turning heads on the East Coast. Born in Brooklyn in 1920, she grew up surrounded by books, manners, and pressure. Her father was a successful insurance broker. Her mother was a gym teacher with sharp posture and high expectations. Jean was raised to be proper, but deep down, she wanted to be seen. At 17, she visited Warner Brothers Studios during a family trip to California. A cameraman caught her profile and said, "You ought to be in pictures." That one offhand comment changed everything. But her father insisted she finish school first. She studied at finishing school in Switzerland, learned French, and returned poised, almost too poised. By the time she debuted at a society ball in 1938, her beauty was talked about in papers. Still, she wasn't content to be a debutante. She wanted the stage. She landed her first Broadway role in What a Life in 1938. The part was small, but critics noticed her presence. The New York Times called her striking, and that was all it took. She quickly booked another role in The Male Animal, where one particular audience member, 20th Century Fox founder Darryl F. Zanuck, took interest. Zanuck offered her a screen test. In the test footage, Jean smiled nervously, but the camera loved her. Her cheekbones, wide eyes, and steady voice didn't need much coaching. She signed a contract with Fox in 1940, but Jean wasn't just another pretty face. From the beginning, she insisted on roles that didn't box her in. She refused to play dumb or helpless. She even turned down early roles that required her to fake a heavy accent or overact. She wasn't loud, she didn't have to be. Jean Tierney walked into a room and the silence did the rest. By the end of 1940, she'd left Broadway behind and Hollywood was just starting to realize what it had on its hands. Fox signs a starlet. She signed with 20th Century Fox in 1940, and the studio wasted no time molding her into a screen icon. She was 20, fresh from Broadway, and already had a reputation for being impossible to ignore. Her first film under Fox was The Return of Frank James, opposite Henry Fonda. She played Eleanor Stone, an aspiring newspaper reporter. Not exactly the most dazzling part, but it worked. Audiences noticed her, and the studio noticed the box office. Fox knew they had a gold mine, but in the 1940s, a contract meant more than a paycheck. It meant ownership. Studio heads picked your scripts, shaped your public image, and even told you who to date. Jean played along, but she didn't bend easily. She refused to change her name or pluck her eyebrows, which became one of her trademarks. In 1941, she starred in Tobacco Road, followed by Belle Starr, where she played a gunslinging Southern rebel. Both films were hits, but critics weren't kind. Some called her stiff. Others said she was just a face. Behind the scenes, she was quietly taking acting lessons and studying other performers on set. She never wanted to be just a decoration. Fox pushed her harder. By 1942, she was headlining films like Sundown and Rings on Her Fingers, moving quickly between dramas and comedies. The studio plastered her face on posters, pitched her as the most beautiful woman in film, and paired her with big names to boost her status. She didn't complain. She worked constantly. Between 1940 and 1943, she appeared in 9 films, some forgettable, some not. What mattered was the build-up. Zanuck believed Jean was one breakout role away from being a household name. He was right. By the end of 1943, Tierney had clawed her way out of bit parts and into something rare, leading lady status without playing by all the rules. She didn't flirt with the press. She didn't chase controversy. She showed up, hit her marks, and let the camera do the talking. Hollywood was full of loud starlets. Jean Tierney just stood still, and the world came to her. Scandalized in Heaven Can Wait. In 1943, Jean Tierney starred in Heaven Can Wait, a Technicolor fantasy comedy that didn't scream career-defining role, but that's exactly what it became. Directed by Ernst Lubitsch, the film was a polished, high-society romp. Jean played Martha Strobel Van Cleve, a loyal wife who endures a lifetime of her husband's nonsense with quiet dignity and style. Audiences saw something different. She wasn't just beautiful, she was luminous. Critics finally softened. The Los Angeles Times said she outshone the sets, which were designed to look like actual heaven. People couldn't stop talking about her face, her poise, her voice. She seemed untouchable. But the praise came with a strange undercurrent. Behind the camera, Jean was struggling with how Hollywood wanted to present her. The studio insisted she pose for increasingly provocative photo spreads. One publicist described her appeal as elegance with danger. She was uncomfortable with the wardrobe choices but agreed, until one publicity still, showing her in a clingy satin gown, exploded in newspapers across the country. That photo was everywhere. Letters poured in. Some fans were outraged. Others were obsessed. Tierney became the center of unwanted attention. She didn't do interviews about the photo. She didn't complain publicly. But friends later said she hated how that moment changed her image. Studio executives, however, saw dollar signs. The photo in the film cemented her as both a movie star. She was nominated for a National Board of Review award. Suddenly, Jean was headlining every fashion article and fan magazine. Her phone rang nonstop. Directors wanted her. Journalists chased her. She was now the face of a new kind of leading lady, refined, smart, but sold to the public with a wink. Jean didn't fight the wave, but she didn't trust it either. She once told a friend, "They talk about you like you're a painting they just hung." It wouldn't be long before that painting started haunting people. Laura Sparks' obsession. If Heaven Can Wait turned Jean Tierney into a star, Laura, 1944, made her a legend and a ghost. Directed by Otto Preminger, the film was a psychological noir where Jean played the title character, a woman so enchanting that even her supposed death couldn't stop men from falling in love with her. In the movie, a detective investigates her death, only to become obsessed with her portrait. The twist? She's not actually dead. She walks in halfway through the film, alive and graceful, stunning the audience, and him. That portrait became iconic. In real life, it was a photograph touched up to look like a painting. But for many, it didn't matter. Jean became Laura. Strangers wrote letters claiming to have fallen in love with her character. A few even claimed they'd dreamed about her. The obsession crossed into unsettling territory. One man reportedly wrote to Fox requesting the painting for his bedroom. Another sent marriage proposals weekly. Jean didn't find it flattering. She found it eerie. The film was a hit. Critics hailed it as one of the best mysteries of the decade. Jean's performance was praised for being both icy and vulnerable, controlled but emotionally loaded. The camera barely moved when she was on screen. It didn't need to. She received praise from her toughest critic, the press. Even The New Yorker, known for snubbing studio stars, admitted she had an uncanny presence. But the film's success came at a cost. The more people adored Laura, the less they seemed to care about Jean Tierney. The studio leaned in. More posters, more portraits, more mystery woman headlines. Behind the scenes, Jean began feeling erased by the very image that made her famous. Tyrone Power and tragedy. In 1946, Jean Tierney began a romance with Tyrone Power, one of the biggest male stars in Hollywood. He was charming, impossibly handsome, and just as boxed in by fame as she was. They met at a dinner party and clicked immediately. But behind the polished smiles, their connection wasn't smooth. Power had recently returned from World War II service and was emotionally distant. Jean had just wrapped several grueling film projects and was emotionally fragile. Still, they dated quietly for over a year, often traveling to Mexico or sneaking around the studio system's ever-present photographers. She once said he was the only man I ever really loved. Their relationship stalled when Tyrone left to film Captain from Castile Abroad. Gene hoped he'd return ready for marriage. Instead, he came back with distance and a different story. His family reportedly didn't approve of Gene. She wasn't high society enough, despite her upbringing. That rejection crushed her. In 1947, he ended things for good. Gene spiraled. Friends noticed she stopped going out. One co-star said she seemed unreachable. She buried herself in work, but felt abandoned and humiliated. Power's next marriage to a Latin actress, Linda Christian, was a public spectacle. Gene stayed silent but didn't hide her heartbreak from those closest to her. The loss wasn't just personal, it was public. Gossip columns had speculated for months about a wedding that never happened. She became the subject of what went wrong stories and cruel headlines about women being too cold or too controlling. Looking back, it wasn't just a breakup. It was the first public crack in the image Gene had spent years building. The woman who could make men fall in love with a painting had been left behind by the real thing. She never dated Tyrone again, but she never got over him either. Motherhood and silent pain. In 1943, at the height of her fame, Jean Tierney became pregnant with her first child, Daria. She was thrilled. She'd married fashion designer Oleg Cassini earlier that year, and for once, her life seemed steady. But something went horribly wrong. While attending a Hollywood canteen event for soldiers during her early pregnancy, a female fan approached her. The woman had been sick with rubella, German measles, but snuck out of quarantine just to meet Jean. The star, not knowing the risk, greeted her kindly and posed for a photo. Months later, Jean gave birth to Daria. The baby was born blind, partially deaf, and severely developmentally disabled. Doctors confirmed the cause: prenatal exposure to rubella. Jean was devastated. The guilt nearly consumed her. She blamed herself, even though she'd had no idea what had happened until after the fact. Her marriage to Cassini started to crack under the pressure. They argued constantly about treatment, care, and guilt. Cassini wanted to send Daria to a private facility for long-term care. Jean resisted, but eventually agreed, knowing she couldn't give the child the care she needed alone. The fan who exposed her? Years later, that woman approached Jean again, this time at a book signing, and confessed. Jean was polite but shaken. She simply responded, "You have given me the most dreadful sorrow of my life." She almost never spoke about Daria publicly. When she did, it was brief and tightly controlled. She visited her daughter often, sometimes bringing toys or books, but always leaving in tears. This tragedy became a private burden that followed Jean through every film, every red carpet, every fake smile. She kept working, kept showing up, but something behind her eyes had changed. Her fans saw glamour. Her peers saw sadness. One friend said she didn't wear grief, it lived in her voice. Mental hospitals and recovery. By the early 1950s, Jean Tierney was unraveling. The press didn't report it yet, but people on set noticed. She forgot lines, lost weight, and sometimes froze during scenes. She had trouble sleeping. She cried without warning. After finishing The Left Hand of God in 1955, she walked away from Hollywood. She tried to recover privately. Doctors diagnosed her with manic depression, now known as bipolar disorder. She was prescribed barbiturates and given rest orders, but nothing worked. Her mood swung hard, elation one day, despair the next. Friends described her as distant, ghostly. In 1957, she voluntarily admitted herself to the Harkness Pavilion in New York, a psychiatric clinic. When her condition didn't improve, she was moved to the Institute of Living in Connecticut. There, she underwent over 20 rounds of electroconvulsive therapy. She later said she lost big chunks of her memory, including entire scripts and moments from childhood. She stayed in institutions on and off for years. During one break in 1958, she attempted a comeback by working in a department store under a false name. When a customer recognized her, tabloids ran with the story, Gene Tierney broke, working retail. The truth was more complex. She was trying to feel normal again. The press framed it as a fall from grace. But behind the scenes, she was slowly rebuilding. Therapy helped. Medication changed. She reconnected with friends and even wrote letters to Daria again. She eventually made a cautious return to public life. Not everyone welcomed her back, but some directors remembered what she was capable of. She wasn't cured, but she was stronger. She said later, "You don't come back the same, but you come back." JFK, romance rumors fly. Gene Tierney and John F. Kennedy crossed paths long before he became president. Their connection began in 1946, shortly after Kennedy returned from World War II and was newly elected to Congress. At the time, Gene was separated from her husband, Oleg Cassini, and trying to balance fame, heartbreak, and motherhood. They met through mutual friends in the political and Hollywood circles that often overlapped. Kennedy was young, charismatic, and ambitious. Gene, still recovering emotionally, found comfort in his charm. Their relationship developed quietly. There were dinners, long conversations, and a few public appearances. It wasn't a tabloid frenzy, but insiders noticed. By some accounts, their relationship grew serious. There were rumors of marriage. Gene was Catholic. So was Kennedy. But there was a problem. She was a divorcee, and his political advisors weren't thrilled. Marrying a divorced Hollywood actress didn't exactly align with a clean-cut public image, especially not for a man eyeing the White House. Kennedy ended the relationship. Politely, but clearly. Gene was devastated, though she never spoke ill of him. In her memoir, she referred to a man who ended things due to ambitions beyond personal happiness. Most readers understood who she meant. By the time JFK was elected president in 1960, Gene had moved on, at least publicly. She eventually remarried, leaving Hollywood behind for a quieter life in Texas. The media tried to link them again in the early 60s, but those were just recycled rumors from years past. There was no rekindling, no late-night visits to the White House, no secret second chapter. Come back and advise and consent. In 1962, after years out of the spotlight, Gene Tierney returned to the screen in Advise and Consent, a political drama directed by Otto Preminger, the same man who once directed her in Laura. This wasn't a glamour role. She played the poised wife of a senator, with measured dialogue and a quiet presence. But that was the point. Preminger knew Gene's story. He gave her the role not just for her talent, but as a statement. She still belonged on screen. The film itself was bold, touching on blackmail, government secrets, and even hinted at scandals. Gene held her own alongside heavyweights like Henry Fonda and Charles Lawton. Critics noticed. They praised her restraint, her confidence, and her refusal to overplay a part that could have easily been forgettable. The New York Times said her scenes added a sense of real-world dignity. But Gene's comeback wasn't just about performance. It was about survival. She had weathered a public mental health battle, a divorce, family estrangement, and the brutal judgment of an industry that didn't give second chances to women over 40. She wasn't there to prove she could still be beautiful. She was there to show she was still standing. After Advise and Consent, she made a few more appearances. Nothing major, just select roles. She didn't need the fame anymore. She'd tasted all of it, good and bad. By the mid-1960s, Gene quietly retired from film. She remarried, lived in Houston for a while, and kept her distance from Hollywood drama. She hosted charity events, visited her daughter, and stayed out of the headlines. But for those who watched Advise and Consent, that short return was more than a cameo. It was a quiet reclaiming of a career on her own terms. Secrets revealed in memoir. In 1979, Gene Tierney did something most classic Hollywood stars avoided. she told the truth. Her memoir, Self-Portrait, hit shelves without glamour shots and without the usual spin. It was raw, direct, and devastating. She didn't open with her film roles or red carpets. She opened with Daria. She explained the rubella exposure, the birth complications, and the years of guilt that followed. She described the breakdowns, the shock therapy, and the shame that came with losing control in public. "People think a breakdown is falling apart," she wrote. "Sometimes it's just going numb." She called out the studio system for treating actors like property. She named names, carefully, but clearly. She admitted that at one point she wanted to end her life. She didn't glorify it. She didn't dramatize it. She just said it plainly and moved on. The most surprising part? She didn't sound bitter. Her voice was calm, even wry. She talked about fame as a mirror that never tells the truth. She joked about therapy and described psychiatrists the way other people describe bad directors. Politely, but with a sting. Readers were stunned. This wasn't the Gene Tierney they thought they knew. This wasn't Laura or Heaven Can Wait. This was a woman who had been adored, damaged, institutionalized, ignored, and still found the nerve to say, "Here's what really happened." The book became a quiet hit. It didn't top bestseller lists, but it passed from reader to reader. Film historians called it one of the most honest books to come out of Golden Age Hollywood. Young actresses read it to understand what the business really cost. Gene Tierney didn't give fans the version of herself they wanted. She gave them the truth, and somehow that made her unforgettable all over again. Today's celebrities get canceled over a tweet. Back then, these Golden Age icons got away with lawsuits, arrests, and full-blown cover-ups and still showed up to award shows like royalty. Errol Flynn defined morality laws. By the early 1940s, his reputation was out of control. Women, booze, and bar fights followed him everywhere. But in 1942, things got serious. He was accused of misconduct with 2 minors, a scandal that could have ended anyone else's career. Flynn didn't panic. He leaned into the spotlight. At trial, his legal team turned the courtroom into a circus. Fans camped outside. Reporters hung on every detail. Flynn smirked through it all, cracking jokes and signing autographs between breaks. He swore it was all lies. His defense claimed the girls were after money and fame. The jury believed him, or just didn't care. He walked out a free man. After the trial, he kept working like nothing happened. Warner Brothers stood by him. His next film hit theaters months later. The scandal barely touched his career. That's when Hollywood realized something. Flynn was bulletproof. He once bragged, "I like my whiskey old and my women young." No one made him take it back. The phrase followed him for years, and he didn't mind. What should have ended his career only made him more infamous. He wasn't humbled. He doubled down. For the rest of the decade, he coasted on charm, controversy, and sheer arrogance. And the system let him. Bette Davis fought Warner Brothers. In 1936, Davis went to war with her own studio. Warner Brothers kept giving her weak scripts, one after another. She called them junk, and she was done playing window dressing in bad films. So she walked. Then she sued. Bette left for England and tried to work overseas, even though she was still under contract. She hoped a British court would let her break free. That didn't happen. Warner Brothers won the case, and Davis had to crawl back to Hollywood. She was broke, embarrassed, and technically in the wrong. But here's the twist. She still got what she wanted. Instead of punishing her, Jack Warner gave her better roles. Within a few years, she won her second Oscar for Jezebel. By 1942, she was the highest-paid woman in America. That lawsuit, it didn't hurt her. It made her iconic. She didn't just stand up for herself. She made a scene and then made history. On set, she demanded top billing, script approval, and even lighting control. She fought directors. She fired agents. She knew she was hard to work with, and she leaned into it. Clark Gable refused military duty. When World War II broke out, plenty of stars rushed to enlist. Jimmy Stewart signed up. So did Henry Fonda. But Clark Gable held off. At 41, he said he was too old. MGM wanted to keep him working, and he agreed. At first, the public let it slide. Gable had just lost his wife, Carole Lombard, in a plane crash while she was on a war bond tour. People gave him space, but then they didn't. Headlines started asking why the King of Hollywood wasn't in uniform. Stewart was flying combat missions. Gable was still filming. Under pressure, he finally enlisted in the Army Air Forces in August 1942. He went through training and even flew a few missions over Europe. But let's be honest, he was protected. Crews cleared the way. Commanders made sure he stayed safe. He narrated recruiting films and posed for photos in uniform. Gable was promoted to major in less than a year. Officially, he earned it. Unofficially, his fame helped. He served, yes, but not like the rest. After the war, the public forgave him. Hollywood welcomed him back with open arms. But those early months left a mark. He had waited. He hadn't rushed in like the others, and no one really forgot that. Joan Crawford, blackballed directors. By the late 1940s, her career was on a hot streak again, thanks to Mildred Pierce. That role earned her an Oscar. It also gave her more power than ever, and she used it without apology. On set, Crawford demanded custom lighting, last-minute rewrites, and approval over her co-stars. She kept a mirror near the camera to check her angles mid-scene. Directors who pushed back were iced out. She once had a cinematographer replaced because she didn't like how her cheekbones looked. Behind the scenes, she took notes on who crossed her. One director called her the toughest dame in the business. Another refused to work with her ever again. She didn't care. If a man had done the same, she claimed, he'd be called brilliant. Crawford didn't just want control, she expected it. She studied scripts obsessively, annotated every page, and rehearsed alone under harsh lights to perfect her image. It wasn't about the role. It was about staying on top. Eventually, the studios stopped fighting her. They gave in. For years, she could get people fired with a phone call. Her enemies called her ruthless. Her fans called her unstoppable. But the industry never forgot how hard she was to manage. As she aged, the roles dried up. Directors passed. Producers hesitated. By the 1960s, Crawford was still a name, but no longer a threat. John Barrymore drank on set. By the 1940s, Barrymore wasn't just acting drunk. He was drunk. All the time. Once called the greatest stage actor of his generation, Barrymore had turned into a walking headline. Studios didn't drop him right away. He was still a Barrymore. But by 1940, his drinking had spiraled. On the set of Playmates, his last film, he couldn't remember lines. Crew members wrote cue cards and hid them all over the set. He'd stumble through scenes, reading from behind props, furniture, and even other actors. He made jokes about it. So did the press. People laughed, but no one was fooled. Barrymore was fading, and fast. Directors tried to work around him. Editors pieced together scenes like puzzles. But the truth was clear. He wasn't performing anymore. He was just showing up. He once said, "My only regret in life is that I didn't drink more champagne." That line stuck with people. It sounded charming. But behind it was a man no one could control. Studios still cast him out of habit. Audiences still showed up. At first. But eventually, even they stopped laughing. Barrymore died in 1942. He was 60. By then, his reputation had turned into a cautionary tale. Marlene Dietrich controlled her image. She never let anyone decide how she looked, ever. By the late 1940s, she had built a brand on mystery, beauty, and control. Studios might have paid the bills, but Dietrich ran the show. On every set, she brought her own lighting expert. Not to light the scene, just to light her face. She rejected costumes she didn't like, refused camera angles that didn't flatter. She even cut lines if she thought they didn't suit her image. She once told a director, "I make my own legend." And she did. She curated every still photo, screened every press interview, and approved how her films were edited. If her cheekbones weren't highlighted just right, reshoot. It wasn't just vanity, but strategy. Dietrich understood the power of visuals long before Instagram. She knew one bad angle could kill a career, so she never gave anyone the chance. Studios gave up fighting her. They let her do it her way because her films made money, and audiences were hypnotized. The smirk, the cigarette, the tailored suits, none of it was accidental. Other actresses followed rules. Dietrich rewrote them. Humphrey Bogart mocked studio heads. He didn't care what studio bosses thought. By 1950, he was one of the biggest stars in the world, and he acted like it. He called producers idiots, walked out of meetings, and openly mocked executives who tried to push him around. Warner Brothers didn't fire him. They needed him. After The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca, he was a box office guarantee, and he knew it. Bogart was one of the first actors to break out of the studio system. He hated the way they treated talent like property, so he fought back. He argued over scripts, swapped lines, and pushed back on casting choices. He even formed his own production company, Santana Productions, just so he could make the movies he wanted his way. In 1949, when Warner Brothers tried to force him into another gangster role, he refused. "I'm tired of playing the guy who shoots first," he said. He held out until they offered something better. On set, he joked with crew, but if he didn't like a director, you'd know, fast. He once told one, "You direct your way, I'll act mine." He wasn't always easy to work with, but he delivered, and that's what kept him safe. Lana Turner covered a crime. In 1958, Turner's life exploded into headlines. Her teenage daughter, Cheryl, had fatally stabbed Johnny Stompanato, Lana's abusive boyfriend. The killing happened in Lana's home, right outside her bedroom. The story dominated every paper in America. But Lana, she played it calm, tearful, but controlled. She told the court Cheryl acted in self-defense. The media framed it as a tragic domestic story, but behind the scenes, things looked messier. Stompanato was a known mob enforcer. He had threatened Lana repeatedly. Friends said she tried to end it, but he wouldn't go. When he showed up during a fight and Cheryl stabbed him, Lana made sure the story stayed on the daughter. The coroner ruled it justifiable homicide. No charges were filed. Lana walked free, and her daughter did too. But not everyone believed it was that simple. The studios jumped into crisis mode. MGM scrambled to manage PR. Lana's career was on the line, but instead of sinking, she bounced back. A year later, she starred in Imitation of Life, which became one of the biggest hits of her career. People whispered, "Did Lana protect Cheryl or take the fall for something else?" No one knows for sure, but she stayed famous. She stayed booked, and she never answered questions that made her uncomfortable. Montgomery Clift ignored doctors. He was supposed to be the next big thing. By the early 1950s, he was Hollywood's sensitive rebel, good looks, raw talent, and a quiet intensity directors loved. Then came 1956. One night, after leaving a party at Elizabeth Taylor's house, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole. The wreck nearly killed him. His jaw was shattered. His face was never the same. Doctors warned him to take a long break, rest, heal, let the swelling go down. Clift refused. He rushed back to finish filming Raintree County, even though his face didn't match earlier scenes. You can see the difference on screen, before and after the crash. From there, things got worse. He relied on painkillers, alcohol, and sheer willpower to keep working. He couldn't turn his head easily. His speech changed, but he didn't slow down. He acted like nothing had changed. Directors adapted. Crews shot him in shadow. Editors worked around his injuries. Everyone tried to help, but only up to a point. The damage was physical, emotional, and visible. He became unpredictable on set. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes lost. Clift didn't want pity. He didn't want limits. He believed he could act through anything. For a while, he did. But by the early 60s, his career stalled. His body gave out before his talent ever did. Frank Sinatra versus photographers. He didn't like being told what to do, especially not by the press. By the 1950s, he was one of the most famous men in America and one of the most volatile. If a photographer got too close, he lashed out. He broke cameras. He threw punches. He once had his bodyguards beat up a reporter who printed something he didn't like. Lawsuits followed. So did more headlines, but none of it stuck. Sinatra had friends in high places, politicians, lawyers, even mob figures. Rumors swirled about how much protection he really had. He denied everything, of course, and somehow it always blew over. Rumors circulated in 1957. A Look magazine photographer tried to snap a shot at a party. Sinatra grabbed the man by the collar and knocked the camera to the ground. No charges, no apology. Just more swagger, turned his temper into part of the brand. Old Blue Eyes wasn't just a nickname, it was a warning. You didn't cross him unless you were ready for the fallout. Studios didn't drop him. TV shows still booked him. He even won an Oscar for From Here to Eternity, proving that charm and talent still beat bad behavior. Judy Garland misperformances. She had the voice, the face, and the audience in the palm of her hand. But by the 1960s, she couldn't stay on stage long enough to finish a show. Years of studio pressure, pills, and emotional trauma had taken a toll. MGM started her on a certain pill as a teen to keep her awake during filming. Later, they gave her sleeping pills to knock her out. That cycle never stopped. By her 30s, she was struggling. On tour, she showed up late, or not at all. She forgot lyrics, slurred lines, or broke down mid-song. Fans still adored her. Venues still booked her. But every show was a gamble. In 1961, she made a stunning comeback at Carnegie Hall. The album became a classic, but even that high didn't last. Within 2 years, she was back to missed gigs and canceled concerts. Promoters warned venues. Co-stars crossed their fingers. She once told a reporter, "I'm always being Judy Garland. I'll never get to be just me." That pressure crushed her. Studios stopped calling. Television networks pulled back, but the public stayed obsessed. People wanted to save her or watch her fall. Sometimes both. She was still box office gold, but only if she showed up. That didn't always happen. Marlon Brando rewrote scripts on set. By the 1960s, Brando didn't follow scripts, but rewrote them. Literally. Directors would hand him a screenplay, and he'd toss half of it out. Sometimes he'd rewrite lines the night before. Sometimes on set. He refused rehearsals, changed blocking, delayed shoots. Brando didn't care. He was Marlon Brando. On Mutiny on the Bounty, he drove the entire production over budget and behind schedule. The crew resented him. Co-stars avoided him. But studios couldn't stop him. He was still bankable. He spoke in whispers during scenes, forcing sound teams to scramble. He demanded cue cards off camera when he didn't want to memorize lines. On The Godfather, he wouldn't even learn his dialogue. They taped it to nearby furniture. When a director objected, he shrugged. "I'll give you what I give you." And the thing was, when it worked, it really worked. Brando won Oscars, broke acting norms, and changed Hollywood. He knew it too. That made him harder to control. He refused press junkets, showed up late, insulted interviewers. But producers kept hiring him because he brought something no one else could. He once told an actor, "The only reason I'm in this business is because I haven't found anything else to do." That attitude defined him. Brilliant, unpredictable, and always in charge. Elizabeth Taylor demanded Vatican apology. In 1963, Taylor caused an international scandal and didn't flinch. While filming Cleopatra, she started an affair with co-star Richard Burton. The problem? Both were married to other people. Paparazzi caught them sneaking around in Italy. The world lost it. The Vatican's newspaper branded her with a scathing label implying moral indecency. Harsh words, especially from the Catholic Church. Most stars would have apologized. Taylor didn't. She fired back and demanded a retraction. She never got one, but it didn't stop her. The affair only made her more famous. Crowds followed her in every city. Magazines couldn't get enough. Studios panicked about Cleopatra, which was already over budget and behind schedule. But Taylor wasn't going anywhere. She became the highest-paid actress of her time, earning $1 million for one movie. She showed up late, fought with directors, and demanded rewrites. One producer called the shoot a slow, expensive disaster. Still, Cleopatra premiered. It bombed at first, but Taylor didn't. She married Burton, then divorced, then married him again. It became its own show. Taylor had gone from child star to tabloid queen, and she leaned into it. Warren Beatty refused to be edited. In 1967, Beatty didn't just star in Bonnie and Clyde, he produced it, and he controlled everything. Casting, shooting schedule, final cut. When the studio tried to re-edit the film, he threatened to walk. They backed down. Beatty was only 30, but already had a reputation. He'd rewrite scenes the night before, argue with directors, delay production until he got what he wanted. On Bonnie and Clyde, he clashed with almost everyone. But he also had the vision to see what the studio didn't. The film was revolutionary. Warner Brothers hated the first cut. They thought it was too violent, too weird, and wouldn't sell. Beatty disagreed. He fought for it, hard. He screened it himself, pushed critics to watch. When Time magazine gave it a glowing review, the tide turned. Suddenly, Beatty looked like a genius. The film became a hit. It got 10 Oscar nominations, and Beatty got credit for all of it. From then on, he expected control. He didn't just want roles. He wanted ownership. He took over every set he worked on, often slowing productions down to a crawl. But he didn't care. The final product mattered more. Katharine Hepburn banned interviews. By the 1970s, Hepburn was Hollywood royalty, and she acted like it. She stopped doing interviews, refused press tours, dodged award shows. If someone wanted a quote, she ignored them. If a reporter caught her off guard, she walked away. Studios didn't push her. They knew better. She made her own schedule, picked her roles, controlled her image. No manager, no press agent, no one speaking on her behalf. She once told a journalist, "I welcome opinions, but I don't listen to them." That about summed it up. For decades, she refused to play the game. And it worked. She kept getting roles, even as she aged out of the parts other actresses were begging for. She had a record, 4 Oscars, and she never showed up to accept a single one. People called her difficult. She called it freedom. Directors worked around her. Studios cleared her path. Younger stars respected her or feared her. She wore pants before it was fashionable. Cut her hair short when others were doing pin curls. She did what she wanted, always. By the time the media caught up, it was too late. Hepburn had built a career without ever giving herself away.